All right, here we are.
Hello and welcome to another Dragon Plus live stream. Thank you very much for our audience waiting patiently. We had some technical hurdles to overcome. Thanks to Trevor Kidd filling in today for Pelham, hit by the unfortunate flu bug. So again, thanks everyone for your patience. This is the Dragon Plus live stream where we discuss more of the content heading into each issue of Dragon Plus and take a look at the visuals of the design, the development, and the running of your Dungeons & Dragons game content, including your Dungeons & Dragons digital game content. Today we have not only sitting stereo right, John File, hey. But from Beamdog, Trent Oster and Johnathan Hill.
Hello.
Hello.
So before we get started talking about Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition, just a quick round of introductions. John, have you been on our live stream before?
I have never been streamed live before.
So for folks who might not be familiar with who you are and what you do, who are you and what do you do?
Oh, gosh. What I do is I handle all of the relationships between Wizards of the Coast and people who make video games for Wizards of the Coast that aren't Wizards of the Coast, so licensed video games. So I handle relationships with Neverwinter, and Dungeons & Dragons Online, the Beamdog guys here, Tales from Candlekeep, BCom guys, you probably see those guys stream a lot. The Codename Entertainment guys, that you can see them streaming all the time as well. So we handle basically if they have any kind of lore questions or, hey, we'd like to bring in a new character into our game, which one should we use? We integrate with the D&D team, like Matt Cernit and Chris Perkins, Mike Merles, Ben Petrosor, to get the right answers for them and try to make each of our video games as close to canon as possible so that the people who are really, really interested in details can spot that true D&D feeling.
Which is most of our player base, so that's a good thing.
There's a large number of people that are very, very interested in the granularities of D&D.
There's a flurry of technical activity, people coming and going. I just got your audio in a couple of seconds ago, so if you were a bit low for the folks at home, hopefully they can now hear John File.
I'm very low key, so it's hard to hear me in a normal time.
And as mentioned, one of the partners that you work with are fine friends at Beamdog, including Johnathan and Trent.
Right.
Johnathan and then Trent, if you wouldn't mind quickly doing a round of introductions. I know Trent Oster, you were on the Dragon Talk podcast back on December of last year, so we won't try and reiterate everything that's been said on the podcast.
I think I said many words back then. So we can kind of skip over those words and then we'll use new words.
Keep going, Bart. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I will make up new words.
My train of thought was horribly interrupted by no less than Nathan Stewart adjusting the painting that's on the wall behind me. This is, as another radio personality had mentioned, we're doing it live. So this is part of the fun of that process.
You can't get more real than this.
This is entertaining. So I'm the CEO at Beamdog. I'm also intimately familiar with Neverwinter Nights, having worked on the original project from pretty much concept of one sentence all the way through to a zipped and shipped game. So I think it was 8 years at Beamdog, 8 years at BioWare on it.
Wow.
So it was a lot of fun.
John was just telling me before we went on the air a bit of the craziness leading up to the original launch of Neverwinter Nights. It sounded like you were working, went home and slept for 3 straight days.
Yeah, once the game went live, I just crashed.
Right.
And then when I recovered sufficient humanity to present a kind of a facade of functionality, I rolled in.
Yeah. Jonathan, what about you? Tell us more about you.
So, Johnathan Hill, so sometimes listener, first-time caller on the show here. So I'm the art coordinator here at Beamdog, so I kind of make sure things get to the art stage and we basically ship that stuff out. And then on the Neverwinter Nights side, I'm pretty much the project director on terms of new content that we're going to be creating and astounding everybody with over the coming years.
Nice.
Well, we definitely want to ask about that.
All right. And so,
Yes.
Jonathan, you were...
And I used to be a contract artist for WotC back in 2001 until about 2012. And I cut my teeth there working on the Star Wars license and D&D minis and pretty much everything else I could get my hands in at WotC.
Nice.
Oh, yes, the D&D minis. I loved the D&D minis.
It was a good product.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now that we've got Neverwinter Nights, the enhanced edition, we're going to say go ahead and wishlist it on Steam at the moment. You guys will be announcing the release date a little later on. But if you wouldn't mind introducing the game to folks that might not be familiar with the original title, how would you describe the game itself? And for those who have played it, the consideration would be, what does the enhanced edition bring to the title?
So I think Neverwinter Nights is best summarized as it's essentially D&D in a box on a computer. So it's got everything. It's got a single-player campaign, multiplayer campaign that you can play through. You can play with up to 64 people on an adventure. It's got a dungeon master client, and it's got a tool set to build your own adventure. So it's literally everything we could think of in a box.
And we do have we've got a couple of preview videos to kind of show the folks watching the live stream a little bit of example of the gameplay. Looks like we are showing this is Infinite Danger. These are for Jonathan and Trent, unfortunately not able to see the videos as we're Skyping them in, but for everyone else at home able to appreciate the graphics and the gameplay that we're showing on here.
Yeah, so I think what you're showing right now is the Infinite Dungeon. So there's actually an Infinite Dungeon module that auto-generates levels ahead of you, so you can actually keep playing it for an infinite period of time.
Wow. Is someone still trying to test that out? Do you know
I'm
anybody?
sure somewhere there is a dude in a corner with cobwebs on him and suffering through.
Having played Infinite Dungeon since 2002.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
So was that was the original sort of vision for Neverwinter Nights, was to encapsulate the entirety of the Dungeons and Dragons experience in a digital format, but contain it within one package?
Yeah, it really came down to Baldur's Gate was all about this being part of this epic pre-written story. Mm-hmm. You played your role as we call him Char Name, and you played through this big story with these pre-written companions, and there was a very kind of laid out, an elegant plot that you engage with. Whereas Neverwinter Nights was much more like pen and paper D&D. You sit down, you've got your character, you just play the one character, and you party up with other live players, and you join an adventure together, and you all adventure through. And you can have a live dungeon master overseeing it, and the DM can jump in and possess creatures. He can speak through non-player characters. He can do all sorts of powerful things, including like grabbing the party, and the DM could even grab the party and drop them in a new area or transport them to a new realm. So there's just so much potential there.
Do you remember any of the original playtesting of that, where they're trying to have dungeon masters screw around with the various players in the parties as you were developing the game to see what the constraints were?
We basically came to the realization that in order to make the dungeon masters powerful, we had to kind of run without the safeties on. Mm-hmm. So if you got a jerk DM, it could be a very bad experience. But like pen and paper, most DMs took their role quite seriously and did a great job. And
we're looking at one of the other videos. This is the Pirate's Puzzle, one of the exploratory, and then now we're getting into some of the combat with the skeletons down in the dungeon below. So taking a look at a bit more of the gameplay for folks at home to be able to see that.
Yeah, and Neverwinter looks kind of like its era. It's from that 2002 timeline, 2002 to about 2007 when BioWare stopped active development on it. And we're looking at how we can bring that forward and improve that with the enhanced edition. I think one of the key things with the Enhanced Edition is we've done this, what we call the Head Start program, where we've actually got a group of fans who bought the game on our service Beamdog, who are playing it right now and giving us feedback on how to make things better, what they're enjoying, what they don't enjoy. And we actually use a Trello board up on the internet where people can vote for the things they want us to look at and consider for inclusion.
Great. So you're saying that if you go to beamdog.com, you can pre-order there and get access to the beta. Is that right?
Yeah. If you pre-order it on Beamdog right now, you can get into the Head Start program.
Okay. That's super exciting. I know that when Neverwinter first came out, I picked it up right away, mostly for the tool set. The Aurora tool set is really, really easy to jump into.
And we're showing a bit of the tool set now online as well.
And it's all tile-based, but I think it's deformable terrain, too. You can bring it up and bring it down. Is that right?
Yeah, you can change heights, so you can kind of build up to a certain height level. I think it can go up a maximum slope of 1 height per tile, so you can get up to a maximum of 64 arbitrary height units tall.
Wow. And there's also tons and tons of kind of pre-built buildings and characters. You can drop monsters in and drop monsters out. I know that when we first got the game, my friend Rick called us over and he said, "You have to play my level." And so he had built a level specifically just to cheat. So you'd go in and there was a treasure chest and you'd open the treasure chest and you'd level up. And you go to the other treasure chest and then you'd get infinite treasure. It was kind of.
I'm just going to call it, hey, Trevor.
Everyone has to start with a Monty Hall level. That's pretty much a prerequisite, and that's what gets you.
Can we just run the whole video through?
This one?
You guys have way better friends than I have. The first dungeon I entered was like, and you spawn in and you walk through the doorway and you are killed by a massive red dragon.
Well, it's kind of interesting in that regard. I think, Trent, I think you had mentioned this a bit before that. It really is dependent on the dungeon master itself. The tools are there, but it's really a learning experience for the dungeon master of what is going to make an entertaining session for your players. Is it that where you, of course, you're the dungeon master, you can kill them at any time, but can you give them a realistic challenge and still allow them that sense of victory if it's well played and well fought? And feel like everyone comes away with it with a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction.
From a technical point of view, many universities used this engine to train future game designers for video games. And I know that if you walked into a video game design interview with a number of studios, you would be able to show them your Neverwinter Nights a level and say, look, I have basic scripting skills, I have the ability to place and alter terrain, I have a sense of aesthetics so that I'm not building all sorts of fountains everywhere. Which is what we're watching right now. So yeah, it's. I think the Aurora tool set just really, killed it in terms of bringing these types of tools to normal people.
It also looks like a real-time video of what's taking place in Seattle, Washington, in terms of the speed of development.
Yeah, but there's not enough cranes.
Right.
Yes, you need like 16 cranes all kind of in the same cluster to really replicate that Seattle experience.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to ask if you guys had any particular memories or personal favorites of any dungeon mods that you guys might have created along the way, either in the original or in the new enhanced edition.
That's a tough question. That's not fair. There's so many great things to choose from, and that's what's always been a great strength of Neverwinter is there's an online community that's been creating mods and stories, and it's whatever you happen to be in the mood for. You log in, you download it, and it's pretty much the flavor of the day. And so I can't say there's anything in particular that I would say this is the one that I love more than everything. I love the fact that it all exists, and then I can play other people's stories pretty much at the drop of a hat. And that's one of the things that we want to keep pushing forward and kind of expand on with the Enhanced Edition.
So how will that work with the player community as they create their content? How would that sort of be cataloged in a way for others to potentially explore?
Yeah, historically there hasn't been kind of an automatic way of doing that. There was a series of websites that were set up way back in the day of the Adrenaline Vault. There was the Vault Network, and there was actually an NWN Vault where a lot of people went. Now, a lot of the fan community was still keeping that active, and actually one of our employees, Niv, actually kind of maintains that at the moment. So one of the things we want to solve going forward is that concept of discoverability and being able to find kind of new, interesting adventures, both being able to find kind of these online persistent worlds, because I mean, it's so hard to describe all the things that Neverwinter can do. You can build an adventure that's made for a single player to play through by themselves, or you can make an adventure for a single player with a couple automated AI companions, or you can create an adventure for a party to play through together, or you can create your own miniature persistent world. And the persistent worlds can run up to 64 players concurrent on one server, and you can actually link multiple persistent worlds together. So you can build your own mini World of Warcraft with this. And people have, and the experience is amazing because you've got these live DMs who can jump in and moderate what's happening. And this, when I look at it, there's so many things going on here and so much potential. It's just a question of what facet to engage with. And for us at Beamdog, it's really a challenge of how do we highlight really interesting content and how do we expose the right content to the right people? So these are the things that I think about at 3 in the morning.
So I noticed that on your own streams, the Beamdog streams that you've been doing with Phil, you've been visiting some of these persistent worlds and seeing they still look like they're still that have been in existence for over a decade now, right?
That's correct. The world we were playing on has actually been around for a long time, and they're kind of one of the touch points. We worked with kind of their core dev team to make sure that the features going forward, we not only support what the persistent worlds are trying to do, but at the same time we enable them to do new things. So it's really a lot of engagement on our part, and that's why we didn't just kind of jump to a release. We went to this Head Start program where we could work with the community to make sure we're respecting what everybody wants to do. We're not blowing anybody's things up. And at the same time, we're offering all this potential.
Right. So just a couple of years ago, I think BioWare pulled down for Neverwinter. And you've been resurrecting that, right?
We have the Beamdog forum set up where all the new discussion is happening. And Neil happened to bring forward a whole bunch of the historics discussion. So we've really got kind of all the high points from the old discussions captured, but at the same time, we've got a lot of new discussion rolling forward.
Well, again, kind of going back to what you were saying and what John was saying as well, my own personal experience with Neverwinter Nights when it first came out, everyone in my apartment building would cluster down in the first person who had bought it and immediately jumped into creating their own dungeons and adventures, and were excited as anything to be able to showcase what they had built and what they had designed. In a way, as a dungeon master, you're always excited to create your own adventure material and run players through it. But this was also an opportunity to create those kinds of dungeons and visually show them to your friends as well. And so that was a testament, I think, to the Neverwinter Nights tool set. And being able to see that again in the enhanced edition, it's I'm ready for another round of content creation and seeing what folks are able to pull together. Kind of going back to your thought about, well, how can we help showcase some of the content that is being generated? We'll throw it out now for Dragon Plus, for our online magazine. That might be a great issue feature to kind of look through some of the content that is out there in the community and highlight it and point folks to it. We do that with the DMs Guild for our analog tabletop play. So I think it would be a great opportunity to be able to do that with Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition as well.
There are, what, over 100,000 different mods out there, right? More than that?
I'm not sure the exact number. I think the last I had seen was there was at least 1,900 that were ranked.
Wow.
So that's beyond that number. This was 1,900 that were submitted for people to evaluate and give a ranking to.
So,
and that's one of our things going forward is we want to showcase ourselves, the efforts that the community is doing. Because what we're doing right now with the Enhanced Edition, with the Head Start program, is we're trying to get a lot of those early adopters, those people out there that freaking love Minecraft and they want to make their games, bringing them into pretty much the Neverwinter world to start creating content. So as we start rolling out higher fidelity graphics, that the game is only going to get better, and the more content creators we have kind of working with us and us showcasing them, we can just grow this community.
Right. I know that if you have a little bit of experience working, say, in Unity or Unreal or any other game maker type of engine, the Aurora toolset is it predates that, but it is very, very similar to those types of experiences in terms of ease of use. Getting in, like I said earlier, it was very informative for a lot of people to kind of learn how to get into that if they wanted to become a game designer or a game programmer. The Aurora engine also has, I think, a really good dialogue creation system. One of the very first ones that really considered dialogue trees, and so it was really easy to put in extensive dialogues with NPCs into your levels. I've always been impressed by the Aurora toolset.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point, because people have actually taken the Aurora toolset to create dialogue trees that they can import into Unity, because people have basically recognized that the way the Aurora engine did dialogue just makes perfect sense. So they've kind of mimicked that in other engines and almost making the Aurora toolset just kind of this universal tool.
Well, I think that was one of the big aspects about building Neverwinter Nights was we built tools so that we could make the best and most interesting stories and campaigns possible. And then we spent an additional cycle polishing those tools up and then released the exact same tool that we used internally to the end users. And it goes from top to bottom. You can get into it very quickly. You can very easily create an area, drop down some monsters, but then you actually can dig in as deep as you want to go and build out the kind of crazy content that you want to get into. And you can actually even load the modules that we shipped with the games. You can load the official campaign and take a look and see how it was built.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's super impressive that when you consider the Neverwinter Nights as kind of as the development of Neverwinter Nights, you're actually making what, 3 different products, right? You have the single player RPG, then you have the multiplayer component, which is always kind of an extra game, and then you have this tool set, which is a product in itself. It's super flexible and usable. There's a lot of stuff in here, Trent. You probably worked for a long time.
And that's what's hilarious is it's the game plus its 2 full expansion pack worth of content. Plus, when we built the original game, we weren't looking at Baldur's Gate content. We were looking at Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 content. So there's about 4 games worth of content in there to make your own stuff with, in addition to playing the stuff we built.
That's pretty nice. And not to get too greedy here, but I think you did mention earlier about upcoming content drops as well. Tile sets and things of that nature?
That's one of our plans going forward, is to kind of build some new content and extend out what's currently available in the game and build that kind of new frontier marching things forward. One of our key kind of guiding points is don't break historic content. So we can't break anything that ran before. So if you built your module and you hit it somewhere on a floppy and you find that floppy and you find a floppy drive that can actually load floppies still, you can actually load up that adventure and it should work in the game.
Wow. That's pretty cool to be able to have that sort of compatibility with the original content.
You just have to dig out those 3.5 or 5 1/4 floppy disks. So maybe a zip drive. Maybe if you had a zip drive back then.
I think it's more the challenge of finding the drive to read it than it is to find the media.
Yeah, it's true.
I was going to say, I mean, we're almost beyond DVDs in a lot of ways now. Never mind. Yeah, apropos of nothing, we have a free table here at Wizards of the Coast, and it's always a surprise to see what people put on there. And when the VHS tapes go on, you know somebody's digging deep into their closet to clean that up.
It's a veritable cornucopia of history.
It is. It's like an AV museum in some regards. So yeah, the floppy disks, if they're ever there.
Now, very, very few 8-track tapes, though. Those are really rare on the free table. Not a lot of those.
Jonathan, you had also mentioned bringing in or updating some of the, I guess, re-arting Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition. What's involved with that process?
What it comes down to is, again, I'm going to reiterate what Trent started off with, is we're not ever breaking existing content. Mm-hmm. When we're doing new content, we're basically making sure that it works in parallel as an option to the original content. And right now, the polygon counts on this game were super low for back in the day, and we can basically start adding, 3 or 4 times the amount of detail. And our graphics programmers on this end have actually opened up some additional, render channels. So now we're looking at, we've got the normal maps and specular maps as basically a workflow that we can start working with, which is going to drastically improve just kind of the overall fidelity of the models and just the render quality. And that's just characters, and then there's tools, there's tile sets, there's equipment, there's objects, weapons, of course.
We're looking through some more footage now as we go through, and folks in the chat, some have played the original edition, some have not, so they'll be coming into it hopefully soon. Again, to kind of reiterate, no announced release date at the moment, but you can wish list Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition on Steam, or you can sign up on the
yeah, you can pre-order on beamdog.com mm-hmm. and get in right away onto their what's the term, Trent, again?
Head Start.
The Head Start program.
Thank you.
Yeah, and one of the best parts of that Head Start program thing is we do have a public-facing Trello board mm-hmm. where we have all the most wish-listed kind of features from the community, and then there's an opportunity for people to vote on those. And then through our weekly meetings here at Beamdog, we kind of look at those, we kind of weigh our resource kind of allocation. We say, okay, that's something that we want to do sooner than later because this is what the community is asking for. So we're always kind of responding to that feedback and trying to prioritize just what we can do to basically push this game forward and make the community kind of get behind us on this.
So were there any surprises in what people were asking for as opposed to what you guys thought that people would ask for?
No, the biggest one that pretty much tops the list is people have asked for, upgrading the character models, mm-hmm. right? And, I'm actually watching the stream here as well on Twitch, and, it's, there's times where the game is a product of its time, and, I remember it very fondly through, my rose-colored glasses, but sometimes when you get right in there, it definitely looks a little bit dated. But a lot of the improvements that we have made kind of give us that option of kind of giving the player a bit more control in terms of how they want this game to look. We've added extra depth of field filters, oh my goodness. We got a couple other options in there. So depth of field and...
Yeah, so we added in an uprightness. So Neverwinter was from the era of the fixed function pipeline of rendering techniques. So the brightest anything could get would be to be 100% of the texture. So by adding in a brightness, we're able to actually do an overbrighten like a Knights of the Old Republic and basically emulate later on graphics engines. And really now we're looking at kind of the ways to step it to the next level. And then we've also got kind of a dynamic range tweak where we can actually make it more vibrant and make the colors sharper.
Right.
So
you've up-resed it too, right?
Default. We've up-resed a number of pieces. We're allowing the UI to run up to, I can actually run it on a 4K monitor, and it looks good.
Very cool. That's, and so another thing that you're bringing back is some of the original expansion packs that haven't been seen in a product in quite some time. Which ones are those? Can you name those off?
Yeah, so we've got not only the expansion packs, Shadows of Untitled and Hordes of the Underdark, but we've also got the premium modules, which you simply could not get for the last number of years. We've got the Infinite Dungeons, the Wyvern Crown of Cormyr, Pirates of the Sword Coast, as well as kind of the premium modules that were included into the Diamond Edition. So there's probably enough content here to spend an infinite amount of time playing Neverwinter Nights.
Especially if you're in the Infinite Dungeon. So
You don't even need the Infinite Dungeon. There's so much content.
right. So yeah, the original playthrough, I think, of the original game is 60 hours. I saw earlier today. So yeah, that's a lot of time for an old guy like me. That's at least 15 years of gameplay.
And when I look back at it, I look back at the Hordes of the Underdark, the second expansion that we did, which was epic levels.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of the gold standard for content. The original campaign, it was early in development. We were still learning how to work with the tools. I think Hordes of the Underdark really shows an experienced team, well versed in their tools, understanding how to do things and how to be effective and efficient.
Great.
And we did some really, really cool stuff. Like you're able to command an army and control the layout of a battle, and it's just you build your own golem. You can build a custom weapon. It's pretty awesome.
Really cool. So, speaking of those original novels, you mentioned that you picked up a few of your employees from looking at the people who used to build those mods. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, it's funny because that was actually one of the main recruitment methods for BioWare back in the day was, oh, you want to work at BioWare as a designer? Well, let's see your Neverwinter Nights mod. And then for us, we were looking at the community and we engaged with, we called them our advisory group, which was, we'd identified about a dozen people who were very kind of prominent in the modding scene still, was active in the community. We engaged with them and we kind of used them as our sounding board on, hey guys, we're thinking about doing this. And hey, what do you think about the idea? And sometimes they were like, yeah, that would be really bad that you did that, so please don't do that. So we were very cognizant of their feedback, and we paid very close attention. Because, I mean, sometimes as a game developer, you think about it from your perspective, and it's hard to get into the perspective of the content creators.
Right.
We have a couple, 20-something programmers here that, they were 5 when this game came out, and they're like, this is the game that made me wanted to get into gaming and getting into game development. And it's like, wow, and you're in the perfect spot at this point.
Right.
Well, now I feel
just
old.
made me. I feel really
Yeah. So I was pulling just a couple of questions. We're following the Twitch chat as well. So again, for folks that are familiar with the original Neverwinter Nights, the enhanced edition coming out in the coming time frame, and for those who might not be familiar with Neverwinter Nights at all, again, this is the enhanced edition of the original. So correct me if I'm wrong. This will still be using obviously the original rule set of Dungeons and Dragons at the time.
That's correct. It was a third edition D&D game. We actually were part of the third edition D&D announcement that happened. It was actually my first time public speaking. And I was on a couch in front of like 1,000+ people in a huge hot room, going, "Hi, how's everybody doing?"
See, this is much easier because now we can kind of hide in our studio,
Right.
And we've just got the one camera, although usually a couple hundred people behind the camera looking at us.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the chat for any more questions. Yes, if folks in the chat do have any questions for Trent or for Jonathan, please do send them in. We'll try and address those. Any plans for consoles at the moment?
There's always discussions about what Neverwinter could be and where it could go, and it's one of those things we're kind of keeping close to our chest for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think right now our focus is really engage with the makers, engage with the desktop community, and by desktop I mean PC, Mac, and Linux. So we're running on all 3 platforms.
Okay.
Actually, a large portion of the persistent worlds are actually run on Linux, and a lot of people are able to do just pretty incredible things just by spooling up a Linux server and firing it up on Neverwinter with we call it kind of like the headless server, so it doesn't have a graphics engine on it or anything. So it's actually a really small, compact little beast. So it can actually do quite a ton of amazing features.
And a question about the number of henchmen by default?
In the later campaigns, you can have 2 henchmen. In the early campaign, we basically had it set. You could have 2. The early henchmen aren't quite as configurable as later. Hordes of Underground, you can actually go in and manipulate their inventory. In the official campaign, you couldn't do that yet.
Bart peers into the Twitch stream.
Yes, questions always much appreciated. And on the screen right now, we're going through another one of the playthrough videos. I think Lee Guile at Beamdog was kind enough to put these together and send them our way. So
this is Infinite Dungeon again.
This is Infinite Dungeon that we're taking a look at. So thanks again for Lee over on the Beamdog side to put these together. So. You know, as we kind of continue to showcase some of the gameplay content, Trent, apropos of just yourself, we've been fascinated with the Twitter your Twitter account and the blacksmithing. How did that come together?
When I was a kid, when I was younger, we always used to make weapons and stuff, but we always had junk metal laying around, so we would build swords that just would not stand up. And they would end badly. One of them actually died in a lawnmower. My dad found it.
Oh.
Yeah. So in the winter we were running around beheading snowmen, and it was pretty cool. And then we forgot about it, and my dad found the sword with a lawnmower, punched a hole through the side. So I'd been doing some kind of weapon making, and then I just started blacksmithing a while back, and no, I might as well. I got a leaf spring here. I'll make a knife with it. Okay, I made a knife, then I made another one, then I made an axe, then I made another knife, and currently I'm working on about 160 layer Damascus Elven Dagger.
Oh,
it's really pretty. It's super pretty.
160 layers. Is that 160 times folding it over and hammering it back down?
Well, I start off for that one. I think I started with 17 layers. So I folded it over, and every time you fold it, it doubles. So you start off with, I'm trying to remember that one. It's 17, then you fold it back, you'd be up to, what, 34 layers there, and then you fold it again, suddenly you're up to 68. And then every time you fold it, it just keeps growing. But every time you fold it, you have to then draw it back out so it's nice and long, and then you can fold it again. So it's a lot of work at that layer count.
And so that Damascus is the blade, right? It gives it a grain?
Yeah. So it's funny because when you're working with it, the metal actually just looks like normal, clean steel. But then once you've done all the work, you take it and you etch it in an acid, and the acid eats into the 2 different steels in a different manner. So it allows one to darken right down, and the other one that's got higher nickel content stays shiny. So you see this, it looks like a normal knife that you've built for this entire process. You etch it, and then suddenly all this beautiful layering and almost wood grain shows up.
So what I'm hearing really is don't arm wrestle Trent or challenge him to a duel.
You've never seen Trent? Trent has large arms.
From blacksmithing, I can only imagine.
Yeah, so I think Trent is constantly trying to become the world's most interesting man. Trent, let's talk about your car racing for a little bit. So you have a Mazda, right?
I have 2 Mazda race cars, actually.
Do they both run?
At the moment, only one runs.
Okay.
So I have a Mazda Miata that I race in Spec Miata. Mm-hmm. So Spec Miata is hilarious because they're all identical Mazdas. They're basically stock Miatas with a roll cage in them and really sticky tires. So they don't accelerate at all, but you don't slow down for corners. So you just kind of bail through every corner almost wide open, and you pray that it sticks. And you're like, hey, I hope it sticks. I hope it sticks. Hey, it's stuck. Awesome. I should go faster next time. Next time, I hope it sticks. Oh, it didn't stick. Oh, darn.
That's crazy. And so you do all your car maintenance by yourself, right? So you fix your cars after the races, things like that?
That is correct. Usually have a choice. Do I like the position I'm in the race, or do I like the paint job on the car?
Yeah.
And I always choose the paint job because I hate doing body work. So I'm like, you're hyper aggressive. I'm just going to back off, and you can have the position, because usually hyper aggressive people, 2-3 laps later, they spin out, and I get the position back anyway. So,
right.
So we'll look for the Mazda race mod coming for Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition.
I think Jonathan, as the creative director, is ordering his artists to build that right now.
I actually saw recently a mod of a modern world where the guy had cars and traffic running around in Neverwinter Nights.
Oh, wow.
I go back and double check that it's like, yeah, this is actually Neverwinter. Oh my god.
So clearly,
I don't know how he did it, and two, I think it's insane.
So clearly, we were just poking at your Twitter accounts before the live stream. Trent, we were looking at your blacksmithing, and Jonathan, slightly different take of baking the ginger nut cookies.
Oh, it was a total party kill, and I feel terrible about it. So I had to make cookies for everybody.
Wait a minute. You baked them in advance of the TPK, or you had just
Nope.
done it? And
While the tears were flowing and they were rolling up new characters, I made ginger cookies for everybody.
aw.
It was just a bad series of dice rolls, and I just went with it. So I felt bad, but we'll see how it goes. I don't think they'll ever trust me again.
Something, if you, as a dungeon master, let the dice fall where they may without pulling any punches, I think sometimes the players, as a player, I tend to play more than DM, but as a player, I still respect the sanctity of the dice roll itself. So if that's what happened, that's what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not nearly as
They
fun if
rolled on
there's
a
no danger.
rumor
Right?
table.
That's right.
They got the wrong rumor, and then whether or not they believed the rumor, they rolled a 1, so they took it hook, line, and sinker. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to lean into it all the way. And they went in and basically found themselves a nice little Draco Lich that they were not expecting, and they were not prepared.
I don't think any
So-
Draco Lich is actually nice nor little. It's just this my personal point of view.
They had it coming. And they got cookies out of it. Come on, how bad could it be?
That's not bad at all.
And they had to remake characters, which is always
Yes.
fun.
And John, I'm looking at you now as one of my dungeon masters. We've been on hiatus as well. Speaking about games here at Wizards of the Coast, are you planning to restart your campaign?
Well, you haven't gotten back to me, Bart. Everybody else is in. Trevor's in. Stan's in. Adam's in. I'm waiting on your email.
Okay, I'll send that across.
Dr. Farwell needs to live again.
Yes.
So, yeah. So playing for the past is it a year and a half now? We've been playing Spelljammers on Monday.
Yep.
So that's been a wacky campaign, I think.
We're showcasing again some of the videos of the playthrough for Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition. I did have a few quick news and announcements to conclude the Dragon Plus live stream today in a few minutes. But before we go, again, Trent Oster and Jonathan Hill, of course, from Beamdog. Anything further that we should make mention of the Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition? Again, release date TBD. Wish list it now on Steam. Go ahead and sign up on Beamdog to take part and join the Trello roadmap if you're of interest in contributing your thoughts and opinions to the game as it progresses.
Yeah, we've been streaming on a weekly basis on kind of what we're working on and what we're moving from the Trello input board into the Trello we're working on board. And we're basically actively looking for more people to become involved in it. I mean, if you want to have feedback in where we take this puppy, this is the time. And we're going to be marching it forward fast and furious. So it's a fun time.
And when are you live streaming? And we do carry that on the D&D Twitch channel as well later in the week. But for folks that might not be watching, and we heartily encourage you to, when is the Beamdog live stream usually take place?
We typically stream on a Friday at 10 Pacific.
Okay.
Very cool.
So yes, Fridays, 10 Pacific. Tune in to the D&D Twitch channel and the Beamdog Twitch channel. Take a look at their current undertakings. We usually roll that into the fireside chat once a month when we have that on with Nathan Stewart. We just had our last fireside chat this past Friday for folks that tuned in and were lucky winners in one of, I think, our 40 sweepstakes that we did. If we haven't gotten in touch with you for your name and address and phone number, we will very, very shortly. Look for a message on Twitch for that information, and we will be getting out those surprise and delight packages as soon as possible. Just a couple other quick news and announcements. Well, we've got folks listening in. Speaking of live streaming, again, Beamdog at 10 a.m. on Fridays. Danny Hartel will be returning at the end of the month with Craft Hags. This is her live stream she had been doing on her channel, but she will be bringing it directly to the D&D channel starting January 29th. The first episode will be start to finish process of designing, buying supplies for, and making a costume for her D&D character, Scrummy the Gnome. So take a look for that. That will be Mondays, noon to 2 p.m. leading into Dragon Talk. We have a lot of live streams with Dragon in the name, Dragon Talk, Dragon Plus.
We need more dungeon streams now.
We've got Dungeons and Dragons news, but yeah, we used to have the ampersand column. But,
right. We need Dungeon Plus and Dungeon Talk and I don't know, other dungeon things.
Or things that just don't start with D.
That might be.
Speaking of which, we also, Encounter Roleplay will be returning also at the end of January. I want to say January 27th. That's Saturday in their usual 3 to 6 p.m. Pacific time slot for Learn by Play. Will be returning in January as well. And one of the new shows that we had initially discussed last year, Mike Merles was interested in joining our live stream family. We could not come up with a better name than our placeholder, the Mike Merles Happy Fun Hour. So that is now the official name for the show, the Mike Merles Happy Fun Hour.
We'll get that trademarked right away.
Mike wanted to come onto the live stream, literally hook his computer up to the screen so that you could see what he is working on. And that will be kicking off January 30th, leading into Dragon Plus. So we'll have that on Tuesdays. Time TBD, it's either going to be 12:30 or 1 p.m. Pacific time. But look for the Mike Merles hour, where he'll be doing a little bit of design and development work with the Twitch audience as well. Coming up for other news and announcements, Dragon Plus, the live stream programming, we're going to be doing our next Dungeons and Doodles episode next week. For folks that might have seen our first Dungeons and Doodles, that was a chance for Stan, for Richard, and we had Emmy on for the first episode with a few questions and topics that Stan and company had put together. So we'll be returning with that next Tuesday for another round. Adam Lee, also in your game,
exactly,
will be joining the fun. So for anyone watching that has a suggestion for a topic to throw out there, please go ahead and do so either in the chat or to any of us on Twitter as well. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Very cool. There's lots of stuff going on.
There always is.
Yeah.
And so for Trent and Jonathan, again, we appreciate the time that you're taking out of your schedules to come on and run us through a bit of Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition and showcase some of the super awesome gameplay and talk through a bit of the modding as well that folks can look forward to.
Well, thanks for having us, guys. It was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So we still have a few minutes, so I thought maybe we would, looking at Trevor behind the console, if we've got, I think we've got the Wyvern Crown Dark video. We might run that through as we head on out here. As always, again, for our Twitch audience,
right.
Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you following the D&D channel. We absolutely appreciate you subscribing to the D&D channel. We appreciate you just watching our shows where we're able to talk about what it is we do and the content that we're making and talk to great partners like the fine folks at Beamdog.
Yep.
And John, thank you for joining me in front of the camera this week as well.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
All right, so on behalf of Dragon Plus, thanks everyone for tuning in. We're going to kind of roll on out here. We'll be off audio, but we'll roll one more video from Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition.
Cool.
look here, something interesting.
Not prevail! This day is
Have a look here, something interesting.